for those who've sat and listened to us chit chat along the way, it's funny. Like I said, it's the Zoom platform, or just the video conferencing has really made the world a lot smaller. So to find out that Anita and Linda Foster have met during the pandemic and have gotten to know each other, and just like I said, it's just amazing that the technology is allowing us to do these things. So that being said, we welcome Dr. Anita. Is it Soni?
Soni, yeah, Soni.
Soni. Okay, want to make sure. Soni. She is the deputy head of BIM for Skanska infrastructure in the UK. Today's presentation of integration of survey, GIS, and BIM in infrastructure projects in the UK. The where, what, and when. And the more I dig into surveying and a lot of the things that are happening in the UK with the Royal Institute and all the certifications over there, it's fascinating to me. So when I saw that you were going to do this session, I said, you know what, that's, whether I was engaged in this way or not, I wanted to listen to this because I think you're going to bring a lot to the table for us to consider. So with that being said, Anita, take it away.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Tim. And thank you to Linda as well for asking me to present. So I hope everyone can see my presentation.
Yes, it is. Perfect. Good.
Great, thank you. So hi everyone. Thanks Tim again for the introduction. I'm Anita Soni and I'm the Deputy Head of BIM for Infrastructure, Skanska UK. Today I'm here to present on the GIS, Survey, GIS and BIM in infrastructure, the where, the what, the when. And I just want to say this is heavily caveated that even though there's Skanska branding all over the slides, this is very much a lot of my opinions and my observations over the last 10 to 20 years within the construction industry. So yeah, please bear that in mind. So just a quick high-level overview of Skanska, just to make you aware. There's a global company established in 1887, and they are seen as one of the world's leading project development and construction groups. We're very active in Europe and of course the United States. And according to last year's figures, we had around 30,000 employees globally, that is. I work in the UK sector, and we have lots of different operating units within the UK. So we have building services or facilities management, and we also have infrastructure, and infrastructure is where my interests are, and that's been my experience over the last few years or so. I just wanted to give a brief overview of me, and just sort of to give my where I'm coming from. I think for this presentation I've got many hats because I've studied GIS, I've been a surveyor, and I'm now working in BIM. So I just want to tell you that I will be putting on and off hats at various stages of the presentation. So I studied geomatic engineering, and I must say it's really nice to be able to say in this community that I can say that and you know what that means. It's quite hard saying that. People don't really know, even in construction, what geomatics is. So yeah, thank you for letting me talk about geomatics more. So I studied that, and then I was really passionate about being on site and doing lots of scanning and surveying. So I went and worked as a surveyor, and back then it was called a 3D surveyor because it's actually such an innovation to be doing laser scanning surveys and 3D surveying. That was actually my job title. And when I'm referring back to my presentation, we'll talk about construction. You've got the clients, you've got the contractor, and you've got the supply chain. So the supply chain is what helped feed to the contractor. So I was very much working for a small local company as within the supply chain. I then wanted to go back and study a bit more, but I also wanted to carry on working on site and get that same satisfaction. So I was able to find with a client, it was actually called Network Rail, who the operator and maintainer of the railway infrastructure in the UK. And they sponsored me during my doctorate, where I started and finished my PhD. very much around engineering, surveying and monitoring. And it was looking at how terrestrial laser scanning can replace traditional monitoring methods, particularly of track. So you can see me there, that's where I'm trying to figure out if we can use laser scanning to measure track just as accurately as total stationary prisms, for example. And that was with Network Rail, and I did that for a good 4 or 5 years. And that gave me really good experience and more experience with the whole infrastructure aspect, particularly rail. That was my interest. I finished my PhD, and as you'll see in the next few slides, there was a lot of government mandates happening, a lot of legislations being put into place with construction and improving efficiency. So actually I thought it was quite a nice opportunity to move over to the BIM side, and I will explain BIM a bit more for those who aren't aware, and just look at working on a project where BIM is being mandated and understanding what that actually means. And that was where I joined Skanska, and that was 5.5 years ago now. So I started as a BIM manager, and I sort of stumbled my way up across the pathway. And now I'm currently deputy head of BIM, where I'm managing a team with the head of around 30 people. That's just within the BIM team. So when I started about 5.5 years ago, there was 4 of us. So you can see over the last 5 years, definitely with the client requirements and the mandate for BIM in the UK, we've expanded that team massively. Yeah, it's to around 30. Still working at Skanska. I'm currently working on the High Speed 2 rail project, which for those of you not aware, it's Europe's largest project. At the moment, building a high-speed rail between London to Birmingham, which is sort of in the Midlands, so midway, so you're going from south to the middle of England, to help speed up trains and get, essentially it's getting trucks off the road and onto the rail to help with carbon footprint as well. And I would just say my passion has always been looking at survey, BIM and GIS, particularly with data integration, especially in the last few years as I've been working on this high-speed project. And also carrying on from my PhD, as-built production. So we'll have as-built surveys, but there's also the as-built BIM requirement that, again, I'll go into a bit more detail. So I think that sort of explains all the various hats that I might be wearing in this presentation. So as I said, this is the presentation, it's the integration, the where, the what, and the when. However, we need to start with the why. So, and it's very much about the BIM why. So in May 2011, so I hope this doesn't come across as a lecture, but it's just to give you a bit of an overview of where we're coming from, hence the motivation. So in 2011, the government produced a strategy, and they basically said, look, we're wasting a lot of money during construction, and we want to reduce this cost, particularly of public sector services and assets. So they wanted to reduce it by 20%, and they perceived that 20% as waste that could be improved. And they said, okay, in 5 years, we want to be better. And they acknowledged that there needed to be a profound change in public authorities and the construction industry. And this is where they started to phase the rollout of building information modelling, which is what I refer to as BIM, on all government procured and constructed projects. And this is where the rollout of what we call the PAS 1192 document. So this was almost the birth of BIM, let's say, and it talked about information management and being efficient with that information throughout the life cycle of the project. So then we skip 5 years, we've rolled it out. So the government produced another report to say BIM and, so I'm just going to move hopefully that works. BIM and digital construction is an important part of the strategy, and we've shown that construction has actually saved an estimated £840 million using BIM. And what they had observed was that to reap the full benefits of it, we needed to develop the skills across the board. So that's the customer or client, what we would say, the tier 1 contractors, but our suppliers in particular, we need to develop their skills, experience and capability around BIM. They also then started to talk about the next level of BIM and moving towards this digital built Britain, and sort of using terminology and words that associate with a digital twin. So most recently, in September of this year, we get another report. So we've got this five-year report that you're noticing a pattern here, and they're basically just updating where we are with BIM and any other new fad that we need to introduce. So they said that BIM has been key to digital transformation. So now we're going to have a new mandate. So forget the mandate that was rolled out in 2011. This is now the new mandate 10 years later. And we need to procure and deliver information management following the ISO 19650 suite of standards. So now this should be for all BIM people in the US, this is definitely something that they're aware of. This is now the new BIM for from a global perspective. The previous ones have been more associated with the UK. And then the other fact that they want to say was they don't want to wait 5 years to update this mandate. They want to do it more regularly. So in parallel to this, again, we have lots of different government reports being produced in parallel as well. And last year, the UK, so the Geospatial Commission was launched within the UK. And then they started talking about geospatial data and how geospatial data will be unifying the connection between things, system, people, and the environment. It also listed nine location data opportunities, which you can see listed here. The main one for me and my interest is obviously infrastructure. And then they start talking about creating these location-enabled digital twins using sensors and data analysis for resilience. So it's also, you know, the physical, the digital feeding into the physical, and being reactive and then proactive as well, to help with resilience, including like fire escaping and all that kind of stuff. So then again, another report by the government started talking about the digital twin and in 2018, there was a report called the Gemini Principles Report, and it started talking about what a digital twin actually is. So it was a realistic digital representation of something physical. And what distinguishes a digital twin from any other digital model is the connection to the physical twin. So this is very much connecting the digital with the physical. As with the government in the UK, it's now been rebranded under something else, and it's now owned by the National Digital Twin Programme, which is owned by the Centre of Digital Built Britain. So a lot of digital built wording going on here. But what I will say is that this is every year. I didn't want to list this because I feel like I'm just showing you lots of reports now, but basically every year there's been an update to this digital twin concept. In parallel with how BIM was being mandated on government projects, I can speak for infrastructure and buildings, for example. We're now seeing in the last few years that our customers and clients and their works information requirements when it comes to BIM is now expanding out, and they're starting to talk about digital twin and how we need to deliver information, data models, etc., to fit into their digital twin concept. I would say this statement is very true. Different people have different definitions of a digital twin. So we'll have a rail client or customer who will have a different understanding of what they want and what they need to feed in for roads versus rail. And currently on some of the tenders that I've seen for rail projects, it's splitting it now between BIM, GIS, and asset information. So I realize I've been talking about BIM a lot, and actually I've not really discussed what it is, but it's actually quite hard. But I would say the latest government report has kind of succinctly explained it. So basically, BIM is it's a combination of processes which makes it possible to generate, visualize, exchange, assure, use and reuse information, and it's throughout the asset's life cycle. I think there was a lot of misconception about five to 10 years ago about what BIM is. You know, is BIM a 3D model? BIM is just a really intelligent CAD model, you know, what's going on? And there was a lot of what we call Hollywood BIM being shown around. But I kind of like this definition because it's understanding that it's a process, it's not a tool. And it's also about generating, visualizing, exchanging, assure, and reusing that information and being efficient with your information management, not recreating or, you know, duplicating stuff and throughout the life cycle. So just want to highlight that. But with my geomatics, survey and GIS hat on, for me, it sounds very similar to how geomatics is defined. And it's about the collection, distribution, storage, analysis, processing of information. Same with GIS, it's the gathering, managing and analyzing data, specifically rooted in this case with, you know, geography, computer science and geomatics, etc. And GIS analyzes spatial location. So for me, with my GIS survey geomatics hat on, when they were talking about BIM, I just thought, isn't this what we've already been doing in other aspects, in other industries? However, for some reason in construction, BIM is basically this, in my opinion. And I just want to give you a bit of a high-level overview of how I perceive construction. So please bear in mind, that's why I've caveated it heavily. This is how I see construction. So first of all, you need to know what you plan to build and where. And we need some intelligence behind that. We need some metadata, we need some attributes, you know, so this is a steel beam with this type of material and this weight and this volume, etc. That's what we mean. Well, that's what I mean with intelligence. You also then need to coordinate with other disciplines. So you need your MEP people to speak to your civils people, to speak to your structural people, etc. So they need to be talking to each other, but then you also need to spatially do that coordination, which we call clash detection. And then you also need to go through that assurance process, and all of that information feeds into that assurance process. You then need to, using the BIM process, is doing it accurately digitally. First, to avoid challenges on site. So build digitally first, that's what we always say, and build right physically. You also need to then do this dynamically you also need to then track this dynamically and digitally during construction of what has been built and where. So we need to constantly feed back what's been built, where has it been built, what were the changes as per the design of what we planned to build a few steps before. Then it's about updating any changes from your original design. So you've built something and now you need to update the changes from the design, or what we would call the as constructed or the as built information. Oh, and you also need to do it all on time and on budget, because from a contractor's point of view, it's all about how you're going to make your profit margin. It's very, very low. So we need to make sure that we are being efficient and building it all on time and on budget. And I think this is where the government mandate came. They realized there was a lot of waste. And in my opinion, there was a lot of waste happening around here. I think we're very good at doing that design and building it digitally. But the minute we need to then hit the ground and feed that information back, or, you know, start talking about this digital twin aspect, it kind of goes out the window, in my opinion, and we need to track it better. There are some great examples where it's working really well. But in terms of getting that live update and that latency from site, for it to all be on time and on budget, because we need to ensure that we do that handover process as well. That's quite a challenge. So essentially you need to think with the end in mind. And I think that's one of the other sort of statements that came out with the BIM mandate in the UK. Again, with my survey hat on, that was talking about the importance of the whole to the part. So I was taught in surveying, it was all about when you've got a big survey or a campaign, you need to think about all the parts to then help mitigate the errors when you do the final whatever survey you're doing, for example. So I've briefly given you a lecture of the why in the UK and why we need to do this, essentially to be more efficient, to reduce waste, and just be better at that full life cycle. So let's talk about the fun stuff. It's the where, the what, and the when. So for me, this was one of my first projects when I joined Skanska. This was Waterloo Station. It's the biggest station in the UK in terms of footprint and connections. And it's in London. So for me, this is where we were starting to do survey for BIM. So BIM, the process, survey was feeding into that. And this is what I would call the start of the digital asset. So when we're talking about all those processes that I mentioned with the BIM definition, I'm just trying to extract the themes here. So this is where we did a laser scan of the full station. Just a bit of a backstory here, actually, we did actually have a laser scan of the asset in existing conditions. However, when we started to interrogate the data a bit, in terms of quality, we found some residuals with the survey control, and it was enough. I believe it was about 50 millimeters plus, and that was enough for that to have an impact on how we were designing and that clash and coordination. So again, get it right first time, do your quality checks, etc. But we basically had to go and do a whole new campaign, go and scan it. And as you can see here on the right, we're starting to build it in an intelligent way. So it's not just necessarily 3D models, there is some intelligence behind this to then help feed the coordination. And then this will be done once, and it can be used for handover in an accurate way. So we're capturing, processing, and exchanging all this information that we're capturing on site. Another example here is survey for GIS, particularly during the design process. So all these examples, I should have said, I'm trying to sort of loosely follow the design and construction and the asset life cycle through design and construction, which is where my focus is. Here we have, most surveyors will understand that this is a topo survey that's been carried out as per a survey request by one of our designers. That sits, we just happen to be using AcoSim as our modeling solution, and that just happens to sit in ProjectWise, which we call the common data environment, which is basically hosting all the information in one place. Now, as a designer or a project manager or a commercial person, you don't necessarily need to view that model, but you do need some sort of context and understand from a contractual point of view what we as a contractor have fed our our design team for information, but also commercially to say this is what survey that's what we've done, this is the scope. And actually, rather than going into this, you can loosely see this whole thing here. So this is actually the road and some particular assets that we needed to coordinate with. And you can see here, sorry, it's a bit faint, in blue, you can see this is covering the survey boundaries. So we were able to find a solution to automatically extract the boundaries from here in 2D and bring it into our GIS solution. So this is our Esri platform that we're using on the project. And also, I've had to block this out because of confidentiality, but we've got all the attributes here. So we've got a link to this model if you want to delve deeper, and you've got all the information. So what version it is, and version controlling is very important with information management, as you all well know, and when it was last revised, and a description of it, and that correlates to all this metadata within this environment. But now you can see visually and contextualize, and all these patches here you can see in yellow and red are all the surveys that we've carried out. So for me, we've done the generate, visualize, exchange, contextualize, and as I said, you can delve deeper into the information if you need to. And I think that was a really big win, particularly for our designers, to then say, okay, the contractors have delivered this survey and this is where we need to go to find it. You can also see these triangles, which we've also populated, which are our survey control from our primary, secondary, and I think tertiary control across the site, which we then share with our engineers. And it's our engineers who end up doing the setting out, particularly in the UK. There's also, as well as survey for GIS, there's GIS for survey that we've noticed. So this is an example of a witness diagram. I'm sure you have something similar in survey, where you basically, for every control point that you have, you need to say where it is and describe it a little bit. So you would typically have a drawing like this, giving some dimensions and the asset, for example, and some context and where it is. However, this is on a piece of paper, this is going to get lost, this is going to get destroyed somehow, whatever. So by using Esri's Survey 123 platform, we were able to digitize this and generate it like, this is very similar to the template that we produce anyway. So what would happen is that would be taken and copied and pasted into here, and then all this would have been manually created. However, we were able to digitize this whole process, reduce any errors, so typos, etc. It just wouldn't allow for it because there's set requirements for the fields that need to be filled in. And instantly you've got a really nice, you've got the photo, you've got the context, you can add the the dimensions if you want to. You've got some context here, and then also you've got, I believe we've added what 3 words as well to this as well. So we've got what 3 words and the context here. And then taking that to the next step, we're then feeding that back into our map solution, our GIS solution here. So you can see here, this is the witness diagram. And this is where you can click to then access this document, etc. This is particularly useful for the engineers on site as well as the survey team to, you know, maintain them and update them if needed. And for me, this is just the whole benefit of BIM, is getting access to data quickly and easily. It's that single source of truth, so there's no opportunity for finding something somewhere else. It's always in one place. And more recently, we've added in our scan locations. So we're using our Cyclone Enterprise as one of our solutions for viewing scan data. So we're now linking in these nice triangles, and you can click on that and it will open your true view or your scan data, your street view, for example, in color, in whatever, and you can then interrogate the information. But again, in GIS, we're able to contextualize everything and visualize it and share it as well. We make this map solution available for everyone. And I didn't highlight this actually, but you can see here we've got lots of different maps for different purposes. So we've got a tunneling one, for example. We've got one for engineering surveying. We've got a generic one just showing the route for context, etc. We've got logistics, we've got communities engagement, etc. So it's not just survey information. We are providing a lot of the other information other teams need that's fit for purpose in a very similar way, and trying to automate it as much as we can. Then moving away from the design aspect and, you know, sort of gearing up to hit site, survey for BIM again, so using it for logistics and site coordination. So this is an example where, as you, sorry for the UK units here, but we've got basically 6 centimetres of clearance here, and we knew it was going to be tight, so we actually needed to get this crane in the Waterloo station. It's a very compact station, there's a lot of interface, a lot of buildings nearby, and we had to bring in this plant to be able to lift in part of the new roof that we were installing. And obviously a construction manager was just saying, we need to check that we can actually get this in. And we asked the suppliers to produce models of what of their plants that they were going to bring in, this particular crane, for example, and we were instantly able to use existing information. So this is all as-built survey. This is a laser scan that we brought in, and we brought it into our modeling environment, and we were able to do quick clearance checks. And we were just saying, I mean, yes, it's possible, but you've got six centimeters here and 4 centimeters here. You know, if you want this crane to move, it's going to be very, very tight. But instantly you can see and visualize through survey information that again was captured once and reused, so just following that BIM life cycle, to be able to help with logistics and site coordination. I don't think we ended up using that plant because this is far too tight in construction to use. And then sort of continuing that on, so I think we were then just getting a bigger scale. So you can see it's this same, I think this is the smaller version that they then put in. So we were able to bring it into what we call our Navisworks coordination model, bring all the disciplines together. So it looks nice, but there's also intelligence behind this roof information. This is now bringing the survey information. We just did a quick mesh and we were able to import it and coordinate everything really nicely. So it's just understanding. So in the previous slide, you can see this is more about the existing and the as is, but we realized obviously part of these assets already exist. This is going to go in. How is this going to work? So again, it's exchanging that information, visualizing it and reusing it for aspects such as logistics and for the site teams as well. Survey for BIM again is, I'm sure some of you have seen this as well. So we have our BIM model with all the sort of light grey and orange and blue colours and yellow here. And this was a notorious corridor where there was, I think it was basically supplying the entire Waterloo station. So I think I can't remember, it had a notorious name anyway. But basically you can see here that there's the laser scan, and what's happening is once a week we would go and laser scan whilst the installation was happening of all the MEP and the refit, etc. not only does this allow you to track what's going on, so you can see here that there's the model in the orange model in the background, but you can see now that this has been installed, and that's good progression. Also, it shows that they've put everything in the place that it was supposed to be. So in terms of construction tolerance, that's great. There doesn't need to be any redesign for any further works to go in, for example. And then you can also see and then you can do a nice comparison and show, okay, this is complete, what's next, what's the program. And also we were able to have these regular design review meetings. So a scan would be done on, say, day 1. By day 2, we had it up into the model and coordinating all that information. And it's just for multidisciplinary reviews. It was fantastic for everyone to see this. And also now we have some solutions such as Trimble Site Vision, where you can then go on site and teams call back to the site and show them virtually if you don't have time to do that scan. Also, this is really valuable for as-built scans, so we can progressively hand this information back to our client. And more recently, on my current project, it's about photogrammetry now, so it's still survey data, obviously, but for photogrammetry. So we're using a solution called iTwin, which is a single web environment. And what's neat about this is that all those models that we're generating for design in that BIM context is automatically synced into this web browser. So this is all over the browser. Doesn't matter how good your laptop is, etc. This is all over the web. So it's all about your internet connection. So what we're doing is once a week we're flying a drone over the site, and they're able to produce this 3D mesh and provide information and context now. So you can see here that the excavation is still ongoing, and this is where the asset needs to be. So they're just doing that check to check, okay, have we excavated enough? Do we need to do a bit more? And obviously we can then remove the BIM and the design model, and this purely shows the construction progress. And this is being done once a week. Again, a day or two later, we're updating this, and it's just showing like really good latency from the site and that coordination, because sometimes you can lose context, or, you just need to visualize it. If someone says, oh, we've excavated this much on the east side, what does that actually mean? So this, as being a visual person, this has always had far more value to me, and that coordination with all the design information over a web browser for me is fantastic. And I believe I'm just playing the same slide. Yeah. So the next one is Survey for BIM. So this is helping with our as constructed survey. So our clients are now recognizing that we need to be more proactive with our handover. So handing over all constructed information in the model, in the BIM model. They also want to see the point cloud. They're asking that for a deliverable. They're also asking for the survey verification reports. And all of this they're asking for progressively. So we'll have construction packages that we need to build to. So we need to ensure that people aren't getting lazy on site, and they need to know what they need to deliver, right? That package is happening. These are our handover and as-built requirements. That's what we close a package and we can move on to the next package. Whereas traditionally it's far more about let's build everything and then we'll hand over everything. And it's just a nightmare, because by that point, everyone has left the project. So for me, the clients are beginning to see how they can help with this waste that I mentioned at the beginning. And the end in mind is thinking, right, let's be far more proactive with this. So this is showing, again, this iTwin solution, which is hosting here all the design. Also just want to note that it hosts all the temporary works information, utilities, topographic surveys. We can do it all. And what's been nice is seeing that transition from design review to now construction review. So here's a vent shaft that we're building for part of the works. And I've taken a section off the model. And we have this data model tree for the BIM models, but also for reality data. So here you can see this is a scan coming from an MS60. So it's the total station laser scanner. It's not a, so you're getting a really nice overview. First of all, it's always great to see that you've built something where you're supposed to. And we can do those construction tolerance checks. You can do that interrogation within this environment. And that then helps feed that validation verification report from a survey point of view that's required. So again, this is all being done over the web browser. And all we needed to do was speak to the survey team and understand how they were breaking up their data and their information, and then informing them about the naming standards, etc., from an information management point of view. And it's just that upskilling and now they're doing it across the entire project, and we're seeing a lot of information coming in now from them, which is great to see that empowerment, which is what I'd like to see across other aspects of construction too. So I've just obviously talked about survey because of my survey hat on, and I definitely get more involved with the survey GIS data exchange. But what about other data and information integration? So here's a great example. So when I show you where the survey boundaries were being showed on GIS, it was great to contextualize and visualize. However, we received this drawing of some, these are actually cranes and their widths and how they're going to span. And we get an email saying, okay, hi, we want to visualize this, and we want to show this to our local community. This is an area that's densely populated within central London. As you can see, there's a lot of obviously existing track, and then the new track here that we're going to build. And then there are these crane locations which are needed to help build the asset to go into the underpass and the underground. And this is all residential in the surrounding areas. Basically, we have to show to the community how their area is going to look when all these cranes are up. And I just kind of laughed, sadly, I guess, to say, how are the local community going to understand this? They're not going to know what these red circles are and how that's going to impact them. If anything, they're going to think something is going to be hitting their house, etc. So it doesn't look good. So then there was a community person said, okay, this is what I kind of want to show, and these are the locations. How can we do this? And we just said, this is where we need to go 3D. Yeah, sorry, my question mark is, how are we supposed to understand this information? So this brought on the birth, let's say, of Skanska GeoBIM. So GeoBIM is very much about feeding in not only BIM and geospatial information, obviously surveying information, it's also now other 3D models and any 2D, 3D, PDF, trying to interpret all that information. So it was the first time that we were trying to deploy this on a what we call a mega project in the UK. And we were taking all sorts of data types and formats. And the vision was to be able to have a technological solution throughout the life cycle. So no matter where you are, if it's design, construction, handover, we want to take lots of different file formats, survey, point cloud, but also any DWGs, DGN, shapefiles, etc., from various different sources, and put it into what we call the bucket, and just throw it into this bucket, and then have this nice Skanska GeoBIM tool in the end. And so if you go, other way, and this is the outcome. So that drawing that I showed you with all the red circles, this is what it is in reality. So here, straight away, from a community's engagement point of view, you're able to show them the visual impact of what it's gonna look like for them, whether they live here or whatever, or wherever. You're providing that context as well with GIS. You're retaining the BIM information from the BIM models. So these aren't just 3D, there is intelligence behind these if you interrogate it within the GeoBIM environment. And also this isn't just useful for communities engagement, this is now useful for site inductions or for the construction team to then visualize and show. And I just want to highlight how this is very much about, we didn't reinvent the wheel, we weren't creating any new data, we were reusing. So we were generating, visualizing, exchanging. It was definitely assured, because this has come from assured information, and it's using and reusing that information. And some of you may have seen my colleague George present on this, but GeoBIM is very much his baby, and he was always very keen for this to be connecting data, disciplines and people. And that was the proof of concept as we went during design. But now we're seeing, as we're progressing through to construction, etc., we're now able to, this example is showing on one of our highways projects now, where we have this interface. This is our design coming in, and we're bringing in point cloud into our GeoBIM environment now. So that survey is feeding into GeoBIM, GIS and BIM, in my opinion. And this is all, again, over a web scene. So he told me this morning he was able to get 100 gig of point cloud in it. Obviously, there's a time to load for him to upload it into the server, but then anyone can use it. Again, if you've got a good internet connection, you're able to navigate around this model. And you're able to then bring in all, which is really important as well, obviously for highways, is underground and overground services. So you're able to see What's always nice is things matching up as well in reality when you get the design overlay and the reality. And you can see now this as built survey and what else needs to be built. So it's going back to that corridor that I showed you, but now it's all in web environment, and you don't need specialist software. There's no excuses anymore. You can just open it, log in, and then pretty much you can take sections, you can take cuts, etc. And I just want to highlight that you are retaining the BIM, the intelligence behind it from the BIM model. So here you can see this is within the Esri environment, and this is our schema essentially. And it's retaining all that information that you would have seen if you were using a BIM viewer, for example. So again, it's just highlighting, we're just throwing lots of different types of data, and immediately it contextualize it, because traditionally you would see a BIM viewer and you would just see the model. You would just have seen this, there would be no context of the surrounding areas, but now you're able to see the surrounding areas. It's been great, and you can create sections as you would want to, as a designer would want to. And I think the key thing here is it being free and widely available to anyone on the project, no matter what your role is. And it's just opened up the opportunity as well. So going back to that definition that was mandated by the government, in my personal opinion, it's GIS and BIM, so what we call GeoBIM, is the combination of processes, and it's possible to generate, visualize, exchange, assure, and subsequently use and reuse this information for this decision making and for everyone that's involved. So I would just say, just because BIM has been this concept within construction and the buildings and infrastructure sector, I think what a missed opportunity was they should have recognized GIS as well, because for me personally, GIS and BIM are both the enablers for what is referred to as this BIM process according to the government's mandate in the UK. And I believe survey is key in terms of feeding this into these enablers. So just starting to look forward a bit, our take on the digital twin. So going back to this digital twin and the digital and physical and feeding to each other. So this is a mock-up that we've done to say this is what we see the digital twin as. So you've got your GIS, you've got the surrounding context, you've got your Internet of Things, you've got your APIs, you've got your sensors which are doing that feed constantly. So maybe doing some predictive analysis, etc. Once you've done that connection, it's then again with sensors for the environment, but also providing context of the environment locally. And then particularly with construction, health and safety is key, and it's massive. So you can start integrating what we call these, the risk registers. And we've done that again, we've done a proof of concept where we've been able to highlight and tag risks and also positive intervention cards and put that all within the GeoBIM environment. And obviously utilities is a huge thing in the UK, and again the government have produced another report about needing underground asset registers, etc. So this is becoming a national thing as well, and democratizing it in that sense. So we can feed in utilities information, and then you've got the BIM information from all the various processes. And again, survey feeding massively into this whole digital twin. So for me, I see it as integrated, interoperable. You've got all these different formats coming in, and it's inclusive. It's for everyone and anyone on the project, even for the local residents to get involved and see and interrogate, for example. And it offers that visibility and transparency as well. And for me, again, as a visual person, you can see straight away the impact of building this asset, for example, in this surrounding area. So looking forward and the challenges ahead. So I wanted to focus, so coming from a construction point of view where design, construction, handover, the things that we do get involved, I would say, and my slides have shown really nicely how we're really doing well with information management during design. And I said earlier, I do believe that when we hit site, there are some things that can be improved upon. So in my opinion, and I've always said this, and I don't think I'm biased, but I always believe that engineering surveyors have always been and land surveyors have been very digital and data savvy. And I think that's because of the digital transformation that we've had with surveying generally from a technological point of view. And we've directly seen the benefits of, where a topo survey can be done by a total station and takes so many hours and so many days, and a laser scanner can just capture all that information within minutes, etc. So we've had to go along with that journey because we would be left behind. I do believe that there needs to be a bit of a cultural and behavioural change for construction delivery. And I do believe it stems from the leadership. So I think we need to have more digital savvy leaders and cascade that down to the various teams and disciplines. I do think there needs to be a redefinition of roles, you know, typical for what we would call a site engineer or section engineer, and include digital and data into their job responsibilities, for them to empower this digital transformation. Because so many times I'm still getting emails saying, well, funnily enough, actually, we had an example where we had the photogrammetry data and we could make it available, and they just replied saying, oh, could we get this in a DWG? And so it's just very frustrating, because you know that that's not what really, like, they're just used to asking for that and just seeing it in their own way. They need to see the wider possibilities and opportunities that there are out there. And again, I do feel like eventually they will get left behind if they start asking for DWGs still, because they need to see from a construction progress point of view, you need to go and see the web browser, embrace it. You're not going to break it. You're not going to delete anything. And because that's some of their fears, actually. So again, it's that whole change. We need to, I think there's the fear of them deleting things. And what's really interesting is these are young people as well, the millennials, let's say. And I think that's what has always surprised me. I do think there needs to be that. I do believe there is a cultural challenge regarding utilizing tools confidently. So tracking what we call actuals. So when it comes to stockpiles and volumes, etc., I do believe that it's just still done in a very traditional way, where we have all the digital tools that can be done, and it's just tracking that information. And also, I think we need to inform them of the benefits of their data input for handover. I definitely feel that they're filling in things, forms, check sheets, inspections, etc., for the sake of filling it out. But now that we're becoming a bit more data savvy, I can give you an example where there's a check sheet. So a check sheet is what we use to then say, this is our inspection and assurance and our quality check, to say something has gone in. So for a pile, for example, we've put a pile in, and part of the check sheet requirements is to say where it's been built in the easting and northing. So what we're able to do is pre-populate a lot of that information from it, because you have to put the design and then the actual in that inspection form. The design, we're now able to pre-populate that using information from the BIM model, so that intelligence is there, which is great. But then when we're trying to fill it in from a construction point of view and the engineers, typos are happening, and they're also maybe not necessary, or they're leaving it blank, for example. But for us, from an as-built point of view, we need to extract that information so we can update our models, and along with the survey data, say this is where it's actually been built. And so I don't think they're necessarily realizing how critical the input of their data is for future, for handover, for example, and just generally for handover and operation and maintenance to the client as well. If they see that this is where the pile actually went and they see there's a typo, or the other day I noticed that there was a northing and easting flipped the wrong way around, that is huge, but they don't necessarily understand that impact now that we're actually trying to get it into this GeoBIM environment. And I think it's really important. So we've been able to show how we maintain data quality, survey, GIS, BIM, and like all the metadata, etc., during design, but we need to maintain it during construction, because I do believe that there are some things that need to be tracked better and monitored better. And I just think no matter what tools there are, there's still too much leniency, which can then spiral. And then also the biggest challenge, I think, is being able to tell the operator maintainer that they can handle a model or the GeoBIM environment. I really, really want to move away from this production of drawings for as-built and handover, because they can utilize the model. And this is where the digital twin will come in. And just look at, I know I've briefly touched on it, but sort of the running theme about the digital twin is you can see that we are developing the digital twin. So in terms of looking forward and challenges ahead, I think I'm asking a lot of questions of, when does the digital twin need to be generated, particularly from the construction point of view? And that then also asks a lot of sub-questions of, when do we need to start that integration with GIS, with BIM, and now with the asset information, and also survey, which feeds in all of those. So I have a lot of questions back, but what's really interesting to see is our customer and clients are recognizing that, and they have their own digital twin, but we need to understand when we as the contractor need to start engaging with generating data and information for the digital twin. And I'm coming towards the end of my presentation. I must admit I've lost track of time. I hope I'm okay. And I hope you haven't all fallen asleep. But this is just a big shout out to all my colleagues in the survey, GIS and BIM world on past and previous projects. And I've learned a lot from them. And they've inspired me to keep me going when I've been frustrated. But again, this just shows this collaboration and communication piece that I've learned from all these various people with various diverse backgrounds, etc. So yeah, it was just a shout out and thanks to them as well. And just to say thank you for listening. And again, thank you for the invitation to speak. Please do contact me on LinkedIn if you want to find out more, or you can give me an email. And particularly Skanska GeoBIM, if you do want to find out more, my colleague George will definitely be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
You're perfect on time.
Oh, fantastic.
There were a couple of questions.
Perfect.
One was, is the viewer proprietary or is it commercially available?
Oh, the GeoBIM. The
GeoBIM, yes.
Yes. So let me just think. We've done lots of various different versions. So this is actually using the Esri platform. So we've developed it in-house using Esri tools, and it's not commercial. What the Skanska bespoke solution is obviously internal, but there are lots of other options available.
Okay, very good. And then the other question was, who generally vets the incoming data accuracies and the metadata to determine suitability for intended use? Who is the gatekeeper to accept or reject or improve the data before it's included in your model?
So we have quite it's a good question. We have quite a stringent process internally as a contractor, but also by our clients. So they need to know, they have their tolerances, they have their quality check processes that we need to adhere to. So I would say it's a combination, but generally, and I can speak from rail, we have a mixture of self-assurance. So we need to do that internally. Also, there are some clients that do like us to send it and send absolutely everything, all the registration reports, the survey control, etc. And they do that assurance as well. So essentially they're the ones who then assure that information. Once it's assured, we can then say, okay, whoever, all our suppliers, our designers, etc., you can then use that information.
Well, very good. No, I think that's all the questions we have. No, nobody fell asleep through this because it was phenomenal. It was very fascinating. I mean, even Brent just said in the chat, I think we're seeing the future and it's not far off. Like I said, I'm flabbergasted, impressed with the thoroughness of all of this and how you've went through and really thought a lot of these processes out along with your colleagues. So kudos to you and your team.
Thank you.
Just fantastic. I'm glad you joined us for this. That's that was a great segue showing how all of these technologies are coming together. So
brilliant. I'm glad. Thank you very much.
We definitely want to have you back and do some things in the future. So
absolutely.
Linda's
got my number.
Okay, don't block our emails, please.
No way. No, I'm always keen. I must admit. So I've had some really interesting conversations with Linda, and simple things like licensing of a surveyor, for example, that just doesn't happen in the UK. But also we've got all these, I think I represented at the beginning, we've got all these mandates and government legislations where I think maybe other countries aren't so onerous. So that's completely changed and driven how we work as well. So
yes, actually, if you don't mind, I would like to I'd like to continue this conversation at some point in time if it's even just you and I offline, because I'm curious about the licensing. I mean, I generally know the whole RICS process, but just some of the things that goes through being a chartered surveyor. you know, what works, what doesn't, because I think we have some opportunities here in the United States because we've got so much technology now that we really do need to specialize some things.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many ideas and so many ways it can go. I'd like to talk to somebody that's already been down that road, and
Yeah,
sure sounds
absolutely.
like you guys have.
Yeah, absolutely. Always welcome to have conversations and chats about that.
How many licensed professionals are involved in these types of projects? What's the size of the
Yeah,
team on something like this?
the size of the team. So I'm currently working on I must admit, it's a £4 billion project. It's huge. And that has a team from a BIM point of view. We have 33 people, and that's the biggest I've ever seen or known of, particularly in Europe. I'm not sure about Asia. Bearing in mind, about 5 years ago, I was on a £300 million project, and there was 2 of us. From a BIM point of view, from a GIS, from a survey point of view, we had, I would say, it was a lot larger because it was a huge project to cover. So I'd say it varied between 6 and 10 throughout the life cycle. But BIM was for me, that's just showing that that change of where we had lots of people in the survey team, but now what's happening is the size of the survey team is sort of remaining steady, but now the need for BIM because of the mandate has exponentially increased. So
sure. Well, I get one of the, you know, and Brent brings up a good question. Somebody wanting to follow in your footsteps, what advice would you give them? I mean, how did you kind of find your path through all of these technologies, and what would you advise somebody to try to help them get to where you are?
I would say, to be honest, try a bit of everything. I think that's what helped me. So as I said, geomatics allowed me to see the whole picture, the bigger picture of all the various different aspects and tools and processes. And then I just did what just felt right at the time. I know that's not a very good answer, but I must admit, I've never had a plan. I've never gone, right, in 4 years I want to do this, in 5 years I want to do this. I've just gone with what's interested me at the time. So just doing loads of laser scanning 10 years ago, 15 years ago was just the thing that I loved the most. And even though I miss sight, I think I'm now getting more interested in the data aspect. So I would say going forward, definitely having some data science or data analysis tools formalized. I know we do it a lot with survey and GIS, but I do think from a coding point of view, I think that will take you far in the future.
Well, and it's something you just said. It just kind of struck a chord with me, that, and especially talking with the young professionals earlier, that, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, and that's perfectly fine, but the younger generations now, you don't have necessarily that 4 or 5 or 10 year view of your career, that things change so much. Phones and computers and the technology, everything changes so fast. It's hard to say, I'm going to go to, I'm sorry, I've talked enough about with my get kids into survey friends. I went to uni long enough that it's, you know, I'm going for 4 years or 6 years, whatever, and I'm going to do this. You get 2 years into it and you're on to something else.
And actually, maybe it's worth us having another conversation, because in my university, they've recognized that now. So they do more foundation of engineering, let's say, and geospatial aspects. And then you can specialize or transfer over. So we've combined with, I believe it's the architectural department, the civil engineering department, you've got the geomatics now, and then there's the data aspect as well. So we're actually producing more hybrid degrees, combining those. So you've got your foundation, which then allows you to specialize based on what you found the most interesting. And I think that kind of oversees that problem a little bit, but obviously I completely agree. When I entered the degree, I was just like, am I still going to want to do this in 4 years? But yeah, luckily for me, I found my niche and my interest, etc. But yeah, I sympathize with that.
Oh, good.